Sweet mother of Jesus' tits, this is gonna be awful. In the world of cinematic entertainment, there is one type of movie that has completely dominated the field for years, to the point that you really very rarely see any other type anymore at the top. I'm talking, of course, about adaptations. With a few exceptions, basically every movie or TV series in the last few years is adapted from a book or comic book series or video games, autobiographies or recollection of events reported in articles or news stories. Be it a fantasy or sci-fi novel, a true story reimagining or a historical retelling of events, an adaptation exists to give you a visual representation of that thing. By the gods, there's even adaptations based on older movies that take an often creative and modern spin on the original story. Adaptations provide the unique opportunity to acquire an original work with an already established fan base or interest and provide the viewer with a visual experience transferring the original work and presenting it in an often thrilling, well-shot and direct way, which, when successful, gives the viewer the chance to experience the thing they love in a new and sometimes even better dimension. On paper, adaptations are the easiest and at the same time most profitable art form in the movie industry. You take something that people love, get acquainted with it deeply, write the script for your project, retelling the story in an engaging and entertaining fashion, pick the actors for the character's portrayal, and pour the cash into the machine. Simple, right? Then why do so many TV shows and movies flop in spectacular ways in recent years? Well, there are many answers to that question, and you can focus on many different issues with adaptations. However, in my opinion, one of the most major problems is none other than utter disrespect for the source material. As I mentioned, making a movie or TV adaptations is fundamentally the easiest form of entertainment you can make on paper. You have the source material, you have a story, you have the side stories, the conclusion, the characters, the world building and personal interactions all laid out for you in detail. You have an established fan base that is well versed in all the lore and all of them eager to see more of their favorite thing. All you need to do as a job is to faithfully transfer what is already created to the screen. Again, sounds like an easy to do task. The problem comes when a movie director or company decide that instead of being faithful to what they have and to the fans, they can simply put their own spin to the story and change things around as they see fit. While this can work in a very positive way, for instance when you change little things like removing a scene that would drag the pace of the show, or adding an additional one to further clarify an established event or feeling from the source material, it can also have a destructive effect on the whole plot, should major events be added or fundamentally changed. Sadly, more often than not, the latter is what happens. Now, in all honesty, I've had the idea for this topic for about a year now, but I never quite got to the point to make a video about it. I have left my channel alone, and due to my work and the state of the world, I really didn't have the knack for recording content. I had no solid ideas, I didn't know how to continue, and if I would stick to it as I have in the past, that is, until Netflix rolled out a second season of a show which they insisted on calling an adaptation while utterly destroying any relatable thing to the source material. The show in question, of course, is called The Witcher. I have been a fan of the Witcher franchise for years, starting with the games, then moving on to reading the books and diving into detail about the lore, the world, and the whole story that I had experienced while playing. I was completely fascinated by the rich and detailed fantasy world that Andrzej Sapkowski had built, based on Slavic and European mythology. It was particularly close to me as I am from Eastern Europe, and I've read about a lot of the monsters in children's books while growing up. The bleak and the often depressing events, the violence, the wars, it was all written amazingly well, and I kept reading one book after the other with drastically growing interest and love. After finishing every bit of lore I could find, after reading even the monster lore book that's available, and replaying the games again, I was like every other fan of this franchise or many other franchise, I was longing for more. Luckily, or in this case unluckily, I didn't have to wait long. In 2017, Netflix announced a live adaptation of The Witcher, and I could see the whole gaming community, me included, lose their shit quicker than after a sour cabbage eating competition. The announcement said that the story would target the book series, which excited even more people and got a lot of those who have not read them before to rush to the nearest bookstore or eBay. The role of Geralt, of course, would be played by Henry Cavill, and well, this came as a surprise and a bit of disappointment for some, me included, when seeing the test footage especially. We completely held a powerful yeah after the first trailer rolled out. When I think about it, I really don't think they could have done better in terms of choosing who to represent the White Wolf. And seeing how Henry is what kept the show together for 2 seasons, I'm happy they stuck to their decision. After more and more waiting, finally on December 2019, the first season was released in full to the world. Now, I won't talk in detail about season 1, as it doesn't really fall into the category of today's topic. What I'll say is that it had several not so small problems, and it could certainly be done a lot better, in terms of casting and storytelling especially. What it did give the fans is an introduction to a mostly accurately adapted world from the books, and after seemingly hearing the backlash from fans about the story pacing, the creators promised us that the second season will have a more linear story, which seemed to put most of the fans at ease, and success was achieved. The people were hooked and could not wait to have more. Booking game sales increased and everything pointed to more future winnings. Sadly, the production was stalled due to the pandemic and we had to wait an additional year, gripping our seats and hoping for the best. But as it should have been expected, the best did not come. December 17, 2021, Netflix finally released the 8 episodes of the long-awaited Season 2. We sat down, turned on our TVs and our computers, and we started watching. I'm not going to reveal every single episode of Season 2 in this video, as the topic is about the major problems with adaptations that The Witcher as a show presents. I have already covered pretty much everything I had to say about each nonsensical plot point in our stream with Gary G reviews, and this video will be linked down below in the description if you want to watch the whole stream. What I'll say is that the events of this season have successfully destroyed any hope of it utilizing the stories from the source material, and any attempt to use them in the future would result in an increasingly nonsensical events that would ultimately ruin the overall experience and bury the original story completely. Allow me to explain. The source material for any adaptation is basically your one true friend. Whether rich or scarce, it provides you with a solid ground to stand on, and depending on which one, you can either build upon it from the ground up or take the already beautiful construction and present it to all different audiences. The key point is that if you have a rich source material that is already popular and has a large following, your job is brought down to essentially figuring out the best way to make it as visually appealing as possible. One of the best examples of a successful implementation of rich source material is the Lord of the Rings trilogy, which was adapted from a over 1000 pages of story divided into 3 books. When you compare it to the story in the movie adaptations, you see what was changed, what was left out and what was added. The twists in some of the events are more noticeable than the others, but they ultimately connect with everything else and in the end do not have any detrimental effect on the culmination and the ending. All of this makes for a perfectly paced, shot and played movie adaptation that was transferred in a smart and most of all faithful way. People feel connected to the source material, and every scene that is adapted directly brings a smile as you literally see written pages being transformed into images. It's no wonder that the Lord of the Rings trilogy still holds up to this day, and it is the best fantasy adaptations of all time. Both The Lord of the Rings and The Witcher are adaptations that have a rich and completed stories that already has established pretty much everything in terms of characters, plot, and the world. But what happens when you don't have that and you start from scratch? A good example of such a franchise is the Transformers. They started in 1980s as a toy line of robots that transformed into cars, but they quickly evolved into more when the creator company Hasbro hired Marvel to write a backstory for the individual toys. This began the G1 period, with the story being told in the form of comic books and very soon followed by the first TV series. The story evolved, changed, was retconned and restored, and continued to grow with more and more characters and arcs being added. To this day, the Transformers world continues to change and new stories are constantly told and adapted. This example shows that you can take a franchise and completely transform or evolve it, giving you complete control of how the story can be made. As more and more stories are added, you get a richer source material, which makes for even more opportunities to adapt it. The Michael Bay movies, for instance, while flawed and downright boring at a certain point, take the most fundamental but also most prevalent characteristics of the Transformers universe and create an entirely different story which adapts more and more elements through time, changes others, and provides a few unexpected twists. The biggest difference between stories like the Transformers and that of The Witcher or Lord of the Rings is that when you have a story that was basically adapted from a multitude of different in-lore universes, you have more freedom to spin around while still being faithful to the source material itself. You don't have one specific world or storyline to adapt, and with so many different arcs and takeaways from a source material that consists of these robots versus these robots in an epic fight to have control of their planet, you can pretty much go anywhere at any time. At this point, I realize that some of the people who watch this will not agree with me and will probably hate that I attack The Witcher in such a way, and I don't blame them. I've seen the reviews and ratings and they're overall on the high positive end, which I find completely understandable. I want to clarify that I don't hate the second season as a whole if we're talking about how it was shot or how the story was told. What grinds my gears is the story itself, the abysmal and irreversible changes that pluck it completely from the books and making it a completely different show. The simple fact that it is called an adaptation and that it carries the name Witcher. Had it been an entirely separated show or had it been a creative fan reimagining, then none of the problems I have with it would even exist. I understand that many of the fans don't think like I do or have not even read the books. This is all well and fine, by the way, and if you enjoyed the story and the season as a whole, more power to you. My issues with the show are entirely based on what the story could have been if it was adapted more faithfully, giving it a much better plot and essentially ending instead of a washed down Hollywood style "We're your family, you can do it" one. In my opinion, The Witcher missed its chance to have a story almost unlike any other in existence, with more connections to the real world than to what everyone is already used to in basically 99% of the shows past and current. I completely understand the need to have a creative input and not just copy and paste what is already written, but such inputs are far better used when instead of scrubbing entire plot points that are crucial to the main story, you adapt and enhance the overall feeling of that plot point, removing the unnecessary bits in order for it to be more impactful to the viewer. I highly suspect that the show will not last to the full 7 seasons it was initially thought for. While it can change direction and be more faithful to the source material in future seasons, too many plot points were already destroyed and each one will be an ever-growing obstacle for many future scenes from the books to be included in an interesting, and even more so, nonsensical way. Taking just two such events from the second season, Ciri killing Witchers and introducing the Wild Hunt at such time, already poses a complete character rewrite and future story development that strays away from pretty much everything that was written in the next 5 books. This means that the creators will either have to bash their heads to write an entirely different story that somehow will also be considered to be an adaptation, or struggle harder and harder to adequately adapt existing storylines, keeping consistent with what they've already produced. In conclusion, The Witcher as a show masterfully portrays one of the two ways a movie adaptation can be ruined, and more precisely, straying too far away from your source material, especially when you have a rich or, in this case, completed one. Other shows and movies like Dragon Ball Evolution, for instance, which completely butchers anything relating to the manga and anime, pretty much falls into the same basket. The difference is that The Witcher didn't start off like that and has successfully managed to hook a lot of people in before it showed its true colors. There is one other way in which a movie or TV adaptation can be ruined, but I will leave that for another day and another video where I will explain it in detail and of course give you some good examples in terms of show. Well, that is all from me at this point. Thank you very much for watching this video. Please don't forget to like and subscribe and ring the bell for any future videos notifications. If you want to, you can leave a comment, tell me your opinion on what do you think about the topic I just presented and any other topics that you might want to see around. I'll see you and stay fresh.